What's up, everybody? We have a potential massive outbreak here, or significant outbreak ahead of today here. Looking at possibly for a moderate risk for significant winds, and as well a widespread threat for tornadoes, and as well a widespread threat for extremely damaging winds, and as well possibly some significant hail. So this is exactly what we'll be looking at throughout this video here. So if you are not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. As well, I'm going to be streaming later this afternoon. So if you guys want to get live stream coverage on this event, whether it affects you or family or your friends, I recommend either sharing the link or as well just watching it yourself there. I'm trying to get as many people on the stream so we can get as many people weather aware ahead of this outbreak here. But without further ado, let's get in the forecast. So here's a look here at the day one outlook here. So we have a lot of changes compared to last night. I mean, this is now the whole area possibly for some severe weather. So almost all of Dixie Alley is under some type of threat for severe weather. And that's what a lot of the Mississippi River Basin there. So look at the slight risk here. We're going to go ahead and skip the marginal risk. We're going to go straight to the slight risk here. So the slight risk is level 2 out of 5 for severe weather risk there. And it has expanded significantly. I mean, it goes all the way down to central Georgia. And it goes all the way as far northwest as Missouri and southeastern Kansas. I mean, a major change. Those areas were not even in a general risk yesterday. So they have leveled up quite a lot as this cap inversion looks like it's going to not affect as much as we thought here. So as you just see, really watching out for some pretty significant severe weather, pretty widespread across the region today. But in a slight risk there includes Dallas, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Arlington, Texas. And if you live within those areas here, better chances you can possibly see just some gusty winds within this squall itself here, or maybe some scattered storms before the actual squall itself, since we're seeing such high cape and high dew points. So scattered storms can very well develop earlier on. So I think that's slight risk. I wouldn't have anything to worry about. Just keep a close eye on it, as specifically across these areas, it'll be overnight. So just keep a very close eye on this event here. But in the enhanced risk, that's when things are to get a lot more, a lot crazier here. So we have 7.2 million people in the enhanced risk now, the level 3 out of 5 for severe weather. That includes now Birmingham under that enhanced risk now, Montgomery now under the enhanced risk, Shreveport, you guys are under the enhanced risk now, Mobile, you guys are now under the enhanced risk, and Little Rock, you guys are now under the enhanced risk. So a lot of those cities, except Shreveport, all those cities except Shreveport are new to this enhanced risk, and that's because this moderate risk has taken the place of the original enhanced risk there, possibly, or a lot of the original enhanced risk. So we have a very, very large and actually a pretty large population under this moderate risk for today. 2.4 million people there, looking at Jackson, Mississippi there, Monroe, Louisiana, Hattiesburg, Meridian, and Greenville, Mississippi. So if you know anybody in those areas, please tell them that things are going to get pretty dangerous tonight within the area overnight. So I would recommend that if you know anybody near Monroe, Hattiesburg, Meridian, that they sleep in their basement and have possibly, I would maybe recommend staying up the night here, because it's going to be a pretty significant event here. So 10% chance for tornadoes here. So the biggest threat for tornadoes, in my opinion, is going to kind of be more towards, I guess, say the evening hours here, possibly 5, 6, 7 o'clock there. So that's kind of when the biggest tornado threat will be there. But again, there's still going to possibly be a small tornado threat overnight with this squall line. But the main threat for tornadoes most likely be later this evening here. So 2.9 million people under that 10% chance for tornadoes. Very large 10% chance for tornadoes, actually. Very little of the enhanced risk is actually under the tornado threat, you see, or under the 10% chance. See, it's kind of more of the moderate risk itself here. So we don't really have a big threat for tornadoes in the enhanced risk itself there. That includes Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, Bossier City, Monroe, and Hattiesburg. And this 10% chance for tornadoes extends a little bit more to the west than the moderate itself there. It goes into northeastern Texas and even near the border of Oklahoma. 5% chance for tornadoes, very widespread across the region. Almost 6.5 million people under that 5% chance for tornadoes. Birmingham, Montgomery, Little Rock, Tyler, and Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So this tornado threat is going to even extend all the way up into northeastern Texas, like I figured it would possibly. So really looking at possibly a widespread general risk for some tornadoes today. Wind threats, the reason why we have the moderate risk here, no doubt, because of this massive squall and we're going to be watching for today. 45% chance, significant risk there for severe weather. But we have a very large significant risk in general today, and it includes a 30% chance significant severe risk there. But 9.6 million people are under that significant severe risk, including Birmingham, Montgomery, Shreveport, Mobile, and Little Rock. And then 45% chance includes Jackson, Monroe, Hattiesburg, Meridian, and Greenville. So again, if you guys know anybody in those areas, please tell them they could possibly even lose power from this extremely strong winds here. And then we have a very widespread 30% chance. We have the enhanced risk, of course, and that includes Birmingham, Alabama, Montgomery, Shreveport, Mobile, and Little Rock. And if you're in the 30 or 45% chance, all those areas are under the significant severe risk. But if you're in the 50% chance, you have a very low threat, really. I say for getting extremely gusty winds. You may get 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts, but not the 65 knot plus. And the hail threat is a little bit on the lower side for the areas that have the moderate risk, like Mississippi and Alabama. But we have a very large 30% chance significant risk, actually possibly for some severe hail here. So again, hail is going to be pretty severe, but it's going to kind of be more severe towards the plains like Texas and Oklahoma because of lapse rates and just because of how the drawline is set up here. So 30% chance significant severe risk includes areas like Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, Tyler, Texas, Broken Arrow, and Fort Smith. So a little bit different names here. And that's probably the reason why that's actually the reason we have the enhanced risk as far west of these areas now. And we have a significant severe risk, including areas like Dallas. So Dallas, you guys are under the significant severe risk for 15% chance significant. Tulsa, Arlington, Plano, and Garland. So it kind of includes the DFW area once again here. But you guys are only under a 15% chance significant risk here. But let's go ahead and get a look at the models. So here's a look at now at the latest 12 on the HRR. So we're going to start seeing some pretty intense storms here by 3:30 Eastern time. So I'd say 2:30 Central time. So that's kind of when we will start to see some intense storms as well as some pretty intense storms as far east as Central Alabama. So like I did say, the reason why we have such a widespread enhanced risk and even 10% tornado risk 10% tornado risk going as far east as Alabama is because of the very high Cape 4,000 plus joules per kilogram. So there's a chance we can see some pretty intense storms or cells blowing up way ahead of time. So there is a chance of, like I did say, for some supercells across Alabama. As when I get to around 4:45 Eastern time, some pretty intense storms developing across northeastern Oklahoma as the cap does break. We're going to see possibly some pretty intense surface-based supercells likely here, and that's going to even possibly lead the threat for southeastern Kansas and as well portions of southwestern Missouri there. But again, pretty intense storms even to northern Louisiana. So in general, it's going to be some pretty widespread coverage for some severe weather. I mean, look, we got the plains right here, and then we got the Dixie Valley right here for some pretty intense cells here. But looking at possibly for some supercells by 6 o'clock here Eastern time across the northeastern portion of Louisiana, and possibly some pretty intense surface-based storms across northeastern Oklahoma and even portions of southeastern Kansas. So going to keep a close eye on possibly some intense supercells within that region. Could they be tornadic? That's going to be the question here. But as we now get later into around 7 o'clock here, then we're see intense linear line of storms going across areas like western Mississippi there, eastern Arkansas, and then possibly some small intense storms left over behind that main little squall line there. And then we have some really intense storms across, like I did say, northeastern Oklahoma there, possibly some small supercells embedded in that. And then here comes the main event here. Then it really develops into a massive squall line here again, and possibly some scattered supercells ahead of that main storm there into northern Alabama, northern Mississippi there, portions of northern Louisiana and southern Arkansas. Going to be watching out for some scattered supercells embedded in these storms here before the main event here. And then here comes the massive squall in here. It's going to be 11 o'clock Eastern time. And like I did say, there can be some small supercells that develop ahead of this squall line. And that's exactly why we have such a widespread 10% chance for tornadoes. So as we continue down to 11 o'clock, even now midnight here, these storms are going to get even more intense. And then the tornado threat will die off rapidly as we get some, as we go overnight. Then the big threat will be winds here. Some really intense storms there across Arkansas, northeastern Texas there, and even some pretty intense storms ahead of this main system across northern Louisiana and as well as southern Arkansas if the HRR is correct. And then it's all going to be going downhill at 2 a.m. It's going to be just a massive area of intense winds and possibly even some very large hail. So we're going to go ahead and look at the cap here, which is a very important factor here within this severe weather event, and actually a pretty big factor to why this enhanced risk did move west so much here. So of course we were talking about some pretty extreme cap by 16Z here. So this is what, around like noon or 11 a.m. But as we now get later into 18Z, this cap actually breaks rapidly across northeastern and actually just much of eastern Oklahoma in general, and as well that cap kind of breaks across Arkansas and the Ozarks. So it's exactly why we're watching probably for some intense storms developing across Oklahoma here. Maybe even some supercells. You see marginal severe weather threat there. But as we go a little bit more now to 19Z and even 20Z, when these storms are going to start possibly blowing up even more, look at that. Almost no cap within the region here. I mean, look at that. Even by 3 o'clock here, I believe it's 3 o'clock, there's like no cap at all within Dixie Alley. So that's exactly why we're going to be seeing even some supercells developing in Alabama and Mississippi there way as early as 3, 4 o'clock because of how favorable the conditions are. And there's, again, no cap. So if we go to there, maybe we can, yeah, look at that. Severe weather reading. 3,200 Cape there, 85 degrees. Look at that photograph. It's not too good at all, but -9 lifted index there. Storm activity is very, very low, though. But again, there's still a chance for some scattered cells to develop there across Alabama. The main threat here is going to be Oklahoma and just these general areas by the afternoon hours there. So pretty intense storms, of course, like Oklahoma. Got a severe weather threat there. I don't see any big tornadoes towards that northeastern portion, but southeastern portion of Oklahoma, there's definitely going to be a tornado threat there. 3,400 Cape there, -10 lifted index, really unstable atmosphere. Photograph is looking pretty good, some nice spin in the atmosphere. Again, tornado hazard there, 6.6 on the Supercell composite parameter, 107 storm activity. So that's a little bit on the lower side. But again, even DFW, you guys are now under the 15% chance for winds and actually 15% chance for hail. So you guys may even get some severe weather, possibly as that cap may break in time here. So that's possibly going to be very interesting here. But again, even portions of western Arkansas, some very, very intense storms likely there. Tornadoes are going to be a big threat across that region and even across northeastern Louisiana. Some severe weather is going to be a big threat. Northeastern Louisiana by 19Z here. That's when that severe weather is going to start beginning to blow up there across that region. And then by 20Z, going to be a big threat across southwestern Louisiana, northwestern Arkansas. 4,000 Cape there, -10 lifted index. Storm relativity is at 161. 77 BR shear, pretty good. Critical angle is at 108, and the photograph is looking decent. I'd say that's not looking I guess the best there. And again, 21Z around 4 or 5 o'clock there. Really intense storms within this area. 19.1 Supercell composite, 4.5 on the STP. Photograph is not looking too good though, but in general, some pretty intense storms likely across northeastern Texas. And then it's going to start capping out by, I'd say, 23Z, 22Z. It's going to start capping out across Louisiana. This to be Arkansas. So this main tornado threat, it's going to be kind of in the afternoon hours across Arkansas. They're going to be seeing pretty big threat for tornadoes this afternoon here. It's going to portion into northeastern Louisiana. Look at that, 4,400 joules per kilogram, but the storm facility is still a little bit on the lower side there. But if we continue now into the northwestern part there, still getting a pretty good tornado reading there. Northeastern Texas there, still getting a pretty good tornado reading there. Even across northwestern Arkansas, we're going to get some pretty significant severe weather. I wouldn't say tornado threat there, but still some pretty significant severe weather. Southeastern Mississippi there, south of that south of that cap, we can get some pretty significant tornadoes there. Even south of the cap, we're still going to be seeing possibly a tornado threat, specifically across northern Louisiana and southwestern Mississippi there. So that's kind of why we have a moderate risk within that region, because even the cap's going to be there blowing up, and within the overnight hours, we're still going to be seeing very low cap within that region here. Looking at a very widespread tornado threat there. 2.6 in the STP. Photographs are looking the greatest though, but we're seeing some pretty good readings there on temperatures and Cape in general. So again, really keeping a close eye on this event here. So again, all going to kind of be getting by 1920Z. This cap will break, leads from pretty significant threats for Oklahoma. Small tornado threat, mainly going to be seeing, I guess, hail and winds there. But a different case there for southwestern Arkansas. We're going to be seeing different scenario there for those areas, as we'll be seeing possibly some supercells within that region. And then, of course, that cap will start to break here by 22, 23Z, but still very interesting here and still pretty significant tornado threat. Here's a look at now the K values here. So we go a little bit now, I'm going to look to 4. So we go now to around 2 or 3 o'clock here, Eastern time. That's when storms possibly could start to maybe develop across Arkansas, Oklahoma, and even Louisiana. Very high Cape, getting actually over 4,000 joules per kilogram across portions of Dixie Alley. And that's exactly why some storms can blow up across Alabama. in the mid-afternoon hours because of how high the Cape values are going to be here. But getting to around 6 o'clock here, some pretty big threats across Oklahoma there, Texas, and even possibly some pretty intense storms there across Louisiana and Mississippi themselves there, getting over 4,000 joules per kilogram across some regions, actually even 5,000 plus joules per kilogram across portions of northeastern Texas there. I would just continue by after 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. A lot of that Cape will die out as a result of that extreme capping. But again, northern Louisiana and southeastern or southwestern Mississippi still have some pretty good Cape values. They don't have any caps, so it's still going to be watching out overnight into 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Some very high Cape getting over nearly 3,000 joules per kilogram. Look at that, 3,058 joules per kilogram across that region here. So pretty favorable conditions overnight, possibly for some supercells across Mississippi there and Louisiana specifically. And that's exactly why that moderate risk is in those areas here. But let's go ahead and now look at the supercell composite index or supercell composite parameter. Looking at some pretty intense storms, you can kind of see really good chance possibly for some supercells as early as 4 o'clock. And even Alabama has some pretty good numbers there into the double digits there, getting, I say, maybe around a 15 or 14 there for supercells across eastern and central, western and central Alabama. Pretty intense storms possibly, though, near the southeastern Oklahoma, southwestern Arkansas, and northeastern Texas by 4 o'clock here. We kind of saw those pretty intense storms within that region here. So we have actually a 31 on the scale here. So 31 is pretty high for supercells. And then as we continue now to around 6 o'clock here, some pretty intense storms, likely a 41 on the scale here. 41 on the supercell composite scale. So really good chance for supercells across south central Arkansas. Pretty good chance as well for some supercells across northwestern Louisiana and northeastern Texas. We kind of saw before the cap broke. And then look at that, getting actually up to a 47.6 on the supercell composite parameter and north central Arkansas. Again, even some pretty good chance for some supercells as far east as northeastern Mississippi there, and even in western Alabama. And then some pretty good chances for supercells across northeastern Texas before this main squall line moves in. And then as the squall line does move in and we get past midnight, that chance for supercells will rapidly die off, except for Louisiana and Mississippi. Still going to be watching out for some supercells overnight in those areas, which is why I said if you live in Jackson, Monroe, I would consider possibly sleeping within your basement tonight, because you guys will still have an overnight threat. Let's go ahead and look at the SCP, or significant tornado parameter. And by 3 o'clock, you're going to get a pretty good reading of between 9 in northeastern Texas. Again, there could possibly be some pretty intense storms throughout western Dixie Valley in general before the main event here. And even some scattered numbers across Alabama, getting possibly up to 2s and 3s there in that region there. And even some scattered 4s and 5s across southwestern Arkansas. As we continue into now 5 o'clock here Eastern time to 4 o'clock Central, going to get up to a 10 across northwestern Louisiana and northeastern Texas. And again, some scattered numbers up to over a 6 across Arkansas. And these are going to get a lot crazier, getting up to a 12 here across central Arkansas and as well portions of northwestern Louisiana, keeping a very close eye on a tornado threat for those areas. And then as captives come in, it's going to really decrease the threat for tornadoes. But again, if you live in southwestern and central Mississippi and northeastern Louisiana, you guys are still going to have a pretty significant tornado threat overnight. They're actually getting up to a 14 there near Monroe and up over a 10 near Jackson, Mississippi there. This will be at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., so some pretty high numbers up to a 12, and then it should die out by 5 a.m. or 3 a.m. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, I will be streaming this afternoon, possibly by, I say, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, but I will see you guys later.